So I'd like to introduce, so for those of you that are just joining, my name is Mark Belache. I'm president of TorontoJobs.ca. TorontoJobs.ca is putting on the Canadian Virtual HR Conference today. And I want to thank our speaker, Amy Davies, for being here as well. Amy is the founder and CEO of tech startup First 30 Inc., offering advanced onboarding and outplacement services to businesses. She is the author of A Spark in the Dark, Illuminating Your Path to a Brilliant Career in a Reorg World. So can't wait to hear the session. So thanks very much, Amy, and take it away.
Okay, thank you so much, Mark. I'm really happy to be here, and thanks everyone for joining. So today we're going to talk about onboarding and transitional solutions built for the new virtual reality. I've been doing a lot of work with HR leaders across North America on an initiative and some research on the future of work and the workplace. And it's in those conversations that I'm learning a lot more about the view of the kind of future of work and what this whole new virtual reality really means. When this pandemic started, people were talking about getting back to normal. And now what I'm hearing from HR leaders is they're having conversations in their organizations, not about getting back to normal, but rather the next normal and planning for that. So there is no going back at this point. And I think that has good things and bad things, but we'll talk about a few different solutions. I actually was in Jeff Waldman's talk earlier today, and it's funny, we're very much on the same page with some of the things that we're talking about. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm Amy. I lived in the UK for quite some time, and I've worked in North America for kind of large, complex organizations. So when I built First 30 and I wrote my book, I had a lot of experience and I kind of grew up in that environment. So I kind of understand what the corporate environment is like, and I've managed through change, whether it be onboarding or layoffs and whatnot. I also published a book that was released last year called A Spark in the Dark, as Mark mentioned, and of course did a ton of research for that book as well, and shared experiences that I've seen throughout my career to help enable people to have successful careers when we're losing or changing our jobs every 2 to 3 years. We have to face confront our career totally differently. When I think about this new virtual reality that we're living in, I think about this quote, and you know, I love Winnie the Pooh, but this is so true and never more true today because everything around us looks the same, but the whole world has changed. So where we are is lost, and now we need to start planning. So great that people are here today learning about all of these things. We're going to talk about the areas that are ripe for change. Of course, we're also going to talk about onboarding and transition best practices, and then First 30 solutions specifically. So what are some of the areas that are ripe for change? It's funny because like I said, I was in Jeff's presentation earlier and he talked about some great solutions. So if anyone hasn't, doesn't know the details of what solutions will fit into each of these buckets, you might want to also connect with him. But there's some ways that we can benefit our employees, our overall business performance, and really help ourselves in HR to kind of enhance our profile within organizations. So the first area is definitely health and wellness, and that's a huge area for businesses as they look at new technology for their businesses, because so much of the healthcare we want to implement now is preventative and proactive rather than fixing people once they're broken. And then of course, a lot in the area of mental health and well-being. There's now automated bots that we can have our employees speak to and engage with that can help them through problems and help them address them before they get too serious. So looking at some areas there is really good for organization. Of course, collaboration and communication is another really important one, because I think we figured out the communication when it comes to meetings with WebEx and Zoom, and we're in Hopin right now. We figured out that structured communication, but it's the unstructured communication that we haven't really figured out yet. And that's, you know, that conversations that we used to have passing our colleagues in the hallway. We haven't really figured that out, but there are technologies out there that are really going to help us with that. I get very excited about payroll and benefits, and the reason that I get excited about this area is because I feel like if we do, the more automation we do of these systems, the better, because it enhances HR's profile within organizations. So that way HR leaders won't be spending time working as much on these areas, and they'll be spending more time focused on their employees and the strategy. When it comes to engagement surveys and analytics, I have a very strong background in research. And one of the things that I learned when I was in research was what people say and what they say about how they feel can be very, very different from how they actually feel and their behavior. So it's great that we have these ongoing annual surveys to test and benchmark how our employees are feeling about the organization. I don't think that's enough anymore. We need to start looking at ways to check in more regularly. And we also need to be looking at the analytics in our organization and seeing what people are actually doing. Of course, onboarding and offboarding or outplacement is the world that I live in. So there are some great opportunities to implement new resources for your employees through this process. And we'll talk more specifically about onboarding in this presentation. So when we look at people and change and our organizations changing, whether that be that we're bringing people in or laying people off, we have to understand when we're dealing with leadership in our organizations that people resist change. So as much as we can say we're ready for the next normal and we have to plan for that, it's really hard to work with our leadership sometimes who don't want to change. So this is a book I would highly recommend. I'm reading it right now about how to change anyone's mind. And he talks about the barriers to change and then how we can overcome these. So one that I would highly recommend to this audience. And when we're talking about, you know, the world right now and our new virtual reality and what kind of suppliers and platforms we look into, it's really very important to look at the entire landscape and know what exists out there. Of course, we're only going to choose to work with one or two suppliers, but we want to make sure that we know the entire landscape and understand why we're doing what we're doing. We also have to consider the user's expectations. So our employees, when we implement programming, whether it be for health and wellness, whether it be for onboarding or outplacement, we want to think about what their means for comparison is. Where are they looking to you know, understand what their user experience should be and where their expectations are. So organizations and companies like Netflix were built to do what they do today. Not every company was built to do what they're doing today. And that's why we have to take a hard look at the organizations that we're working with to implement new software solutions and technology into our company. I know because actually I've worked for telecommunications and cable companies as well as companies that sold goods, and I know how hard it is to go from bricks and mortar to an e-commerce environment and really create a solution that our people and users will adapt to easily. So again, when we're implementing these solutions and when we're looking and assessing these solutions, it's really important to think about what is the end user experience, because users will not be comfortable and they will avoid technology that they don't understand, and not everyone is comfortable enough to continually ask the questions. So let's look at on some onboarding best practices. And I promised that I would talk about 6 keys, but first I'm going to talk about how people are feeling in organizations when we're going through change. So I've done a lot of research into well-being. And well-being is one of those things that if you take away it changes a lot, you know, like all of us. Some days we have great days, some days we don't have such great days. And one of the key contributors to how well we feel is our control over our own outcome. So when our control from our outcome is taken away from us, we can really feel depressed. Our productivity will go down. And you might be saying, well, onboarding is such a positive thing. Yes, it is a positive thing. It is a big change for people. They're meeting people they might not, it's not natural the way that we're doing it anymore. But when we're onboarding, we're probably also letting people go right now because companies are going through so much transition. There's new roles, we need new types of expertise. So we might want to be thinking and checking in and communicating with the people in our organization and understanding how well they are feeling and how that will affect them and their productivity. And one thing that I talk a lot about, but I don't see organizations talking much about, that I wanted to bring up today is imprinting. And imprinting occurs when we have an we're initially introduced to a category, to a brand, to a person, or to an organization. And this is the rapid learning that occurs during a short period that establishes this long-lasting behavioral response. And once it's established, it's very, very difficult to change. So what's happening when you're introduced into a new organization, for instance, is that you are almost taking a picture of that, a blueprint of that experience and that organization, and it's being hardwired into your brain. And once it's there, it's very, very difficult to change. And from there, we build a belief system. And there's been a lot of research that's gone into the belief system, because once we've built and established a belief system, it can be very, very difficult, if not impossible, to change that belief system. So, you know, when you look at, you know, we recently went through the US elections. When you look at elections, if a voter is a certain type of voter, it's going to be really difficult to change their mind about what party they are going to vote for. Another example, current example, is vaccinations. So some people believe that vaccinations cause autism. And when the medical community wanted people to get vaccinated more, and they wanted people vaccinating their children, they went to market with a campaign and said, hey, vaccinations do not cause autism. But the problem was the people who believe this have an established belief system. You're not going to change their mind with a 20-second ad. So they went back to the drawing board and they built a new campaign, and it was all about the impact of not being vaccinated on specific children where the worst happened. It's tragic. And what they did was very smart, because they didn't fight against an established belief system. A new, much more immediate and scary belief system was created, and then we see change. So people are now vaccinating their children at increasing rates. Of course, our bringing in employees is not about vaccinations or anything like that. It's just to make the point that once an experience is established and we have this strong cognitive response, it's very, very difficult to change someone's mind. So there are so many benefits of onboarding, and of course, imprinting positively is one of them. It establishes a sense of belonging. We get people to be productive more quickly, and they'll be more engaged with their organization. We'll see higher rates in employee satisfaction. And then at the end of that, we'll see improved retention rates. Because if we think about imprinting and that experience that's hardwired, it would make sense that retention rates would be higher, because people will feel a lot more connected to their organizations. Oops, I went backwards. So let's talk about ways to make that onboarding experience exceptional for employees. So one thing that we can do is assign a buddy. And we suggest that you assign a buddy that's either equal level or maybe just slightly more senior than your new employee, and it's not going to be their manager. And the reason is because this is a person they can ask those questions to. They may not want to ask anybody else. So that person, we suggest, calls them the week before, has a conversation with them, answers any questions that they might have. And they can ask questions like, what do people wear on calls? What time do people log in? Those sorts of questions that they may not want to ask a manager. And this can be really impactful and positive for people starting. It's also great for the buddy, because the buddy feels like they're getting the opportunity to welcome someone new into the organization. It kind of enhances their profile. It gives them a strong connection. And the buddy doesn't always have to be on their team either. I think it's actually better when the buddy isn't on their team, because then it's someone else they know in the organization. Planning a team welcome call is another really important one. The thing about these calls is they can be overwhelming. Imagine, I know when I started my first days in organization, those days were very overwhelming. So trying to keep these meetings small, with maybe 5 people, no more, is better. It's also funny now, because I don't know if any of you guys have had the experience with like kids running around in the background. I have 2 kids at home doing virtual learning. My son recently, when I was on a call, came and gave me a hug in the middle of a client call, which was very cute. But you can imagine that people would be embarrassed if something goes wrong on these calls, and imagine being there in front of like 15 new people. So we suggest keeping these calls very small, 5 team members, no more, and having maybe someone moderate it, and avoiding things like inside jokes during the call, because that could make the person feel like they're outside of the group, and we really want them to make them feel like they're inside the organization and a part of the organization. I love this one. Sending a very small gift like flowers, get a box of donuts, a gift card, or some swag. Because if you think about the fact that a lot of your employees that are at home will already have company swag like pens and mugs and hats, t-shirts, and maybe these may be making appearances on the calls, and then you'll have those few people that are kind of left out. It's nice for them to have a little something. And I know we're not in the office very much, especially now, but if you can get in and get them a few things, that might be a nice way of making them feel a part of the group rather than sitting outside from the group. This one's very funny, because I find that we put these together and it's always surprising who wants a list of acronyms, because organizations, especially large complex ones, can have so many acronyms. Even the people in the organization don't know what they are. So this is really great for new employees. It's also really great for employees that are there already. So thinking about that list and putting it together and sharing it even on your intranet site is great, but making sure that it's in the hands of your new employees is even better. Org charts are always great. I mean, right now it's crazy because organizations are just changing so much. These are going to always have to be updated. So figuring out how you want to present these and have the updates if they live somewhere on your systems. I love the idea right now in particular of putting photographs of employees on these org charts so that people can get to know them a little bit better, even without having seen them at the office. The other thing we recommend to employees is that you have some cohesion in the photographs. I know we can't get everyone together and have them photograph right now, but maybe the same color profile in the background, something that's similar, because when you have new employees starting, it feels better when we're starting in an organization we feel is cohesive. And that's one sign, a small cue that there is cohesion within your organizations. So something to certainly think about there. I don't know, I see a lot of people here, and then there's a chat, so I don't know if you guys have any other ideas. This is my last one for right now, but if you do, please feel free to share them. I'd love to see what you have. But setting up initial one-to-ones is great as well for new employees, because they're not going to know who to meet. They're not, again, going to be seeing people at the coffee machine the way we used to. So helping them get set up with these initial one-to-ones, and then from those one-to-ones, they can continue to meet people within the organization and in different teams. That is great for new employees now more than ever, because you know how hard it was when you've started in organizations to get to know new members of the team if it's a large organization. So I've sort of summarized this. If anyone wants a copy of the presentation, they can reach out to me so that you've kind of got it all on one page. Oh, someone asked the question, who should own setting up one-to-ones? I think that the manager should own setting up one-to-ones. Buddies can also help with that as well. As employees come, so do employees go. And we're seeing this much more in organizations right now. So as I said, we have people who are onboarding, and that's great. But at the same time, companies are laying off employees. So that is something we need to think about, especially when we think about the well-being of everyone, and how do we create a good environment when people are being, they feel like their job may be threatened, or they have seen valued team members exit the organization very recently. So we need to be thinking about that as well when we're thinking about how we manage our onboarding practices. So I've put a few, because if we're laying off people at the very same time we're onboarding, we want to be very clear on how we're handling layoffs. So when we're handling layoffs, I say, make sure that you come to the conversation prepared. And if you're an HR leader, you know that at First 30, we have the 30 questions that people leaders should consider. So it's not necessarily about the HR leaders knowing to do this. It's about all of our people leaders understanding how to do it. Certainly hosting individual conversations when it comes to a layoff is very helpful. I would say that it's not always possible, even though we should really try to make that happen when and if we can. Definitely having the conversation face-to-face if it's one-to-one. We don't know who else is in the room when these conversations are happening, right? So someone's small child could be in the room while we're laying them off, and we wouldn't even know. And imagine how heartbreaking that would be for the person going through it, and for their child to see them going through that. It's never been easier to depersonalize a layoff than right now. So this is a really good time to make sure that we are doing that and not making it a personal experience. And then, of course, being empathetic. And, as people in HR, we are really empathetic, and I know that, but coaching our people leaders who are managing these layoffs, remember, they might not have gone through this before. They're probably nervous having these conversations, and making sure they don't do things like check their phone while they're having the conversation. I don't know if anyone on this in this session has read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, but in that book, he talks about the difference between physicians who are sued by their patients versus those who are not. And the difference is 5 minutes, because it's the 5 minutes that doctor asks more about their patient. How was your day? How is your family doing? Those sorts of things. And at the end of the appointment says, is there anything else I can help you with? So thinking about how we build that into this kind of process and these conversations as well will be meaningful. Provide post-layoff support. I know that a lot of HR leaders now are trying to help their affected employees, because this is such a difficult job market. I deal with job seekers every single day. First 30 is running a ton of free webinars for people in our programs, making sure, checking in with them a lot more regularly lately. So providing people with post-layoff support, whether it's the HR leader checking in with them, which definitely takes the sting out of it, or their manager checking in with them, is really good, but also providing actual outplacement support like what First 30 has to offer as well is good. Now, make sure that we're not forgetting the people who are left behind. So when we're talking about onboarding and we're having layoffs happening at the same time, it's even more important to laser focus on your employees who are there, because you want to make sure that they are feeling, that they're still okay, right? And that they don't feel like they may feel like their job is at risk. And in fact, I coach organizations to make sure that their employees that they do not tell their employees that it's over, that the layoff is finished. Because what always happens in larger organizations is there's what's called an echo restructure. And, we thought that certain functions were really necessary, and we realized they're not as necessary, or people are placed on teams and there's not a great fit. So we really have to think about the people who are left behind, Never more so than when we're onboarding people at the very same time, because that is going to send mixed messages to our employees. So when it comes to our onboarding and outplacement solutions, we've had a great past year. We were recognized as an alpha startup for Collision. We're now a client of the Spark Center, which is part of the Mars Innovation orbit. And we're also partnering with organizations like Lighthouse Labs and their Career Accelerator, which we're really excited about as well. We were built for this virtual world. We did not have a crystal ball when we were building our solutions. We just knew that what we were building were great. And it just so happened that these fit really well into a virtual world. And so users can access our programming on any device, whether, it's actually fantastic on mobile. When it comes to onboarding, we definitely work, and it's a more tailored approach. When it comes to outplacement, we have all kinds of different solutions to help employees through that. I'm not going to show you the demo today, but if you want to see it, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. This is sort of what it looks like on mobile. I've sort of taken some screenshots from my phone, but you can see it's day-by-day programming, which you can do with either outplacement or onboarding as well. We didn't do it alone. We have a great team. This is some of our team of experts. And Jeff, like I said, you heard from earlier today. Ron Eves is our Chief Growth Officer, and he's on as well today. So when it comes to onboarding, of course, we talked about the benefits. If you want, I can actually send you a virtual onboarding guide that we have, so you can reach out to me. But we talked a little bit about the benefits. And of course, when we think about imprinting, there are more than we can count. When it comes to outplacement, I know that cost is a huge barrier for clients. So we've been able to address that and offer a very cost-effective and amazing solution. And our services are really relatable. I mean, I've been through that. I've been through it. So I really understand what people are going through, and this program was built to be relatable for anyone who's been affected by a layoff. We really guide our users through the experience. And we cover a range of topics, particularly wellness. So you can get in touch with us. Like I said, Ron is on the phone. My email is amy@first30ready.com. We're going to be running a workplace wellness series in 2021. You can register your organization. You can book a session with us, because we love to help organizations go through these kinds of transition and help their employees feel in control of their own outcome. You can receive, like I said, a copy of our virtual onboarding guide, and it has all of these and more detailed explanations of each of the keys to successful onboarding. We're going to be running an HRPA replay soon. I did a presentation on how to cope with toxic people in the workplace, and wow, we had a huge response to that presentation. So if you want, you are more than welcome to reach out to us to join that session, and of course discuss our services and costs. And I see a few questions coming in here. So we have a question about how to convince a higher authority to invest in more onboarding. Thanks for that question. It's a very good one. It really pays, and I think talking to leadership about the benefits of onboarding is going to be really helpful, because onboarding does have a really great impact on organizations in terms of what you benefit from. If people stay, retention is higher. That benefits the organization. Having people come and go from organizations is very, very expensive. We can also get people to be more productive much more quickly, which will again benefit the organization. So those benefits I actually have listed in the guide. So if you want to reach out to me, I will send that to you, no problem. And they are all there, and you're welcome to use them. I think we have like 2 minutes left, so if anyone wants to furiously type and ask any other questions, I'd be happy to answer them. You're also welcome to reach out to either to Ron or to me, and we would be happy to answer your questions directly. But thank you so much for joining today. I really appreciate it. And enjoy the rest of the conference. I think that Mark may be back on. Otherwise, I'll just have to.
I'm here. It's Rachel. Sorry, Amy. I'm just another one of the organizers. I know I was probably going to be like, you think I was Mark. as introduced you. But I just wanted to say thank you so much. And I did have a quick question. And I don't know, I missed a little bit at the beginning, so you may have covered it. But in onboarding, like, is there a traditional kind of timeline for, because there's a lot of things that have to happen, especially virtually, you know, when there's not personal connection and you're trying to make that personal connection, but you're also trying to teach them about the company. Like, is there a proper timeline, or maybe you mentioned it, or you have it on your, you know, in your package or what have you, but it just seems like there's a lot, like there, you know, that's why I think a lot of people need to outsource to someone like you, because I did it at the beginning of COVID with, we had a new hire. And between, you know, trying to make them feel cohesive in our organization, but also trying to teach them the material and the training, and you're not sitting with them, like there's just so many components of it. So do you have an ideal, like this should be done and then this should be done and it should be done within a month time period, or is it different for every organization?
Well, our program, of course, is first 30, so it's 30 days, but the resources are always there and available to them. I don't think we can expect someone to onboard effectively after 30 days, certainly. I think we still need to be coaching and helping them, but there's certainly a lot of resources they can have. I would say 90 days is, you know, about a 3-month time frame is what we should expect. I do think the buddy calling them the week before, I know it sounds silly, but it really helps. That buddy is so much more impactful than people realize, and can get them up to speed a lot more and make them feel comfortable a lot more quickly.
Right. Yeah, no, such a great idea. So maybe I would suggest just putting your website and maybe contact information in the session, in the chat there, so people can easily click on it and access your information. But thank you so much again for sharing. I know we had people were very engaged and it was such great content. So thank you so much, Amy. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, have a great, oh, you put your website there so people can just click on it.
And my email was in the presentation. I'll put that up as well. It's just amy@first30ready.com. And that is hard to type and talk. And
I know, right?
Wow, you have to learn how to do so much at one time these days, right?
I know.
There, I did it. I think I even spelled everything correctly. Amazing.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you so much, Amy. We appreciate your time.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Thanks. See you in the next session, everyone. Thanks.